right. Hello, everyone. It is great to see you. My name is Dr. Roberta Suzette Hunt. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your facilitator for today of the Equity Advisory Group, our November Equity Advisory Group. Jake, will you put up the slides for us? Closed captions in English and in Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Go to ibr.news/captions. So reminders, we encourage EAG members to turn on your video. We love to see your faces. Please say your name when you begin to speak. And if you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744.
That's actually not the right number.
Not that.
Because we have someone else running tech support today. Lauren.
Yes. Okay, please. Yes. Yeah. It's 360-931-5839.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. Public input instructions. There'll be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting. To submit input after the meeting, email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line, or call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. So today we have an icebreaker. We have our program administrator update. We're looking at key performance indicators. We will have public comment and we will close. Today we will close a little bit earlier than our usual time. So we will we'll go for about 90 minutes. So our icebreaker. So your name, your pronouns, your affiliation, and beach or mountains. What is one of your favorite spots? Beach or mountains? All right, so Aiden, I know you like to go places. And it's good to see you.
All right. So hello, everyone. Aiden Grunauer, pronouns are they, them, or he, him. And affiliation, so I work as a civil rights manager for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. And absolutely beaches for me. Beaches, number one, especially warm beaches, I will say. Did you want me to pass it or?
What's one of your favorites?
Oh, one of my favorites. Locally, I would say Oceanside, and non-locally, I would say Tansei Beach in Thailand, southern Thailand. I'm going to pass it to Andre.
Felt it, Aiden. I felt it. Hello, everyone. Andre Beeler, he, him pronouns. I'm the Workforce Equity Project Manager at Metro. I'm filling in for Sabrina Owens-Wilson this evening. And I would also go beaches. And locally, I would say, and not for the reason you probably think, but Bandon for golf. That's kind of my thing. I will pass it to Emily.
Yeah, I really love mountains. I grew up around a lot of them in Northern California, but beaches are definitely my favorite by far. And I live down here in Texas, so the beaches aren't the cleanest. My favorite one, though, if you just kind of ignore the chemical plant on the way there, it's a pretty nice time. So I will go ahead and pass it to Shane.
Thanks. I'm going to go with mountains, and forested mountains to be more specific. And I don't really have like a very favorite spot, but this summer I did some backpacking on the north side of Mount Adams, and it just feels really far away, and it's just beautiful. And you get sort of high up above the clouds, and you can see Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens, and just really pleasant. I'm going to pass it to Meg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Johnson, she, her pronouns. I am definitely a mountains person. I moved from Southern California to Washington State about 8 years ago, and I lived at Laguna Beach for 2 years down in California, and I left on purpose. So mountains for sure for me. I'm a huge fan of Mount Hood up locally here in the Portland area. And Mount St. Helens, of course. That's probably my favorite place to go mountain-wise here. And let's see, what goes next? Let's see. How about John L? I want to know where John L goes.
Well, this is a hard one because I like them both, but the fact that every day I'm looking on Zillow for hopefully a great property at the beach says that it's definitely the beach. There's so many great places along the Oregon coast, as well as the Washington coast, but my probably go-to is Seaside or Nehalem Wheeler area. And I just think it's just terrific. So yeah, the beach. And why don't we ask Greg? Or, of course, Greg, Lake Michigan's not on the list, so I don't know if that counts. So,
well, good afternoon, everybody. First off, I'd like to take a minute just to acknowledge what happened in Colorado Springs yesterday. What appears to be another hate crime directed at the LGBTQ community. So as a society, we have to do better. We have to be better. But I wanted to acknowledge that. Once again, I am in Michigan. There are no mountains, so I would go with beaches. And most folks flock to the Lake Michigan beaches, but I actually like the Lake Huron beaches, which are actually rocky, a little more isolated, but they are absolutely beautiful to walk along and see. So that's me. So I can't see who else is on screen. So
Lauren, have you gone maybe?
I haven't. My name is Lauren Scheimer. I go she, her pronouns, and I am on the IBR program in the communications team. And it is difficult to choose living in the Pacific Northwest between mountains and ocean. But I will say the beaches, and my current favorite is Second Beach up in the Olympic Peninsula. No one's been up there. It's amazing. You hike out to it. We camp out there. Love it. And I will pass it to Jake.
Hi, everybody. Jake War, he, him pronouns on the IBR program. So I would go with mountains. I am very, very much more of a mountain person. And I think one of my favorites is the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. I've done a couple backpacking trips there, and it's incredible. Highly recommend it, and I like it better than Yellowstone. Actually, it's a little less crowded. So, I'll pass it to Matt Sears.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. This is Matt Sears. I use he, his, him pronouns. My favorite place is definitely the beach, in a little place called Tierra del Mar, which is close to Pacific City, down there near Cape Kiwanda. So that's my favorite place. But in terms of the mountains, there's a little place on Still Creek that is my favorite place in the world. So I will give a shout out to mountains as well. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Shona.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shona Carter with the Black Future Co-op Fund, she, her pronouns. I'm assuming I came a little late, so I'm assuming that are you team beach or team mountain? And I am definitely team beach. I prefer a warmer beach like the Caribbean, but in the Pacific Northwest, my favorite beach, my family had a beach house in Manzanita. And so I have very great memories of being in Manzanita. And I also now like to camp and be at Cannon Beach. I love Cannon Beach. So, yeah. I don't know who's gone. So maybe someone else can choose someone.
How about Millicent?
I somehow knew that was going to happen. Good evening, everybody. Millicent Williams, she, her pronouns. I'm with the IBR program. I realize I'm a little close to my camera. Sorry. I too missed the prompt, but like Shona, I'm going to assume it's Team Beach or Team Mountain. I will tell you that my choice to move to Portland from a place that was completely flat, I lived in Texas before coming here, was the day that I opened my hotel window, the blinds on my window, or the curtain on my window, and looked out and could see the mountains. Not that I didn't know I loved them before, but that was kind of the deal sealer in terms of me beginning my search. Although my favorite mountains are on the East Coast, Appalachian Trail. That's a trail we used to follow when we would leave Buffalo, New York in the winter to go to North Carolina, which was my parents' home, and we would follow that. So it has more of a sentimental feel than anything, but it is still beautiful. But I am really more, and if I were to be Team Beach, it would be Atlantic coast, East Coast beaches, because it's warmer. The waves are incredible, and the white sand beaches, you can't beat them. And they also have those in North Carolina and Maryland and Georgia and Florida and South Carolina and every place along. So, and they're all very cool. So I'm team everything, but why I'm important is because of mountains. I don't know who went either.
Shane.
Shane, Tanya, by the way.
I already went. Hi. I'll pass it to Jake. I don't think oh no, you did. You went.
Jake just went.
Tanya.
I thought I was going to get passed over. I am Tanya Adams, she, her, and I'm with the IBR team. I live in Illinois, and it's really, really flat. No great beaches, no mountains. So I'm going to say the hills, Bandera Hills in Texas. They're amazing because you always think of Texas as being flat, but the hills of Bandera, Texas is amazing. And if I had to say a beach, I'm going to say, the lakefront in Chicago on the south side. It's called Rainbow Beach because during the summer, the Congo players are out there playing their music all night long, and it's just amazing. And did Andre go?
Yeah.
I give up.
Soko, our newest member, Soko hasn't gone. So both an introduction and icebreaker.
Thanks, Jake. My name is Soko Iat, he, him, his pronouns. I'm with the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization here in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to cheat a little bit and say even though they're not really warm beaches, the beach on the reservoirs along the Central Oregon Three Sisters areas, like Crane Prairie Reservoir, those always seem very quiet and calm, and you get a nice view of the Three Sisters Mountains and Mount Bachelor and all the other volcanoes. So a good mix of the both. Good to meet you all.
Great to have you here. All right, John.
Good evening, folks. John Gardner with TriMet. My pronouns are he, him. I'm definitely Team Beach. Newport, I like to go Southern Oregon Depot, Bay, Seaside. So yeah, Team Beach. So.
Awesome. And Jonathan.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan Eater with the Port of Vancouver, he, him. And I am a big fan of the Wallowas in Northeast Oregon and that whole area. And hiking up in that area just is really kind of a different experience and one of my favorite places to go.
Lovely, thank you, thank you. All right, so let's have our program administrator, Greg Johnson.
Well, once again, good, well, it's not evening yet. Good afternoon, everybody. And, you know, the program is still churning forward. We have some key things that we've got to get done next year. So we are preparing for a legislative tour of the project that will happen in the next week and a half. So we're going to get some politicians up and put them on a bus and show them what this project looks like close up and personal. So that is a key effort that we're working on. We're also we're working on getting our technical papers out for review on different issues related to the project, whether they be environmental, whether they be technical papers. So the team is working very hard to make those things happen. We are also still working on a framework for how we will run community benefits and where that will fit. So we have a couple of challenges to our original framework. So we're working through those issues to make sure that once again, this is a very robust and complete discussion that involves our equity advisory group, our community advisory group, as well as our executive steering group. So that is still, we're still churning towards with January, we're hoping to have all of the input we need to make a final framework and take membership for that group that we believe will be a subcommittee to one of our existing groups. So interesting stuff. John L. and his team are doing a fantastic job of doing some national research on what community benefits are looking like, what they do include, what they don't include. So we think we're going to have a great process to move forward. So we're also working on a revised estimate for cost for the program. And we're going through a very rigorous process that's looking at both inflation and escalation costs to put together what we think this program will cost in year of expenditure dollars. So we believe we will be in construction in 2026. That will last to 2034. So we're trying to project out and do it in a reasonable fashion about how much this project will cost. And along with that, we're looking at what are the sources to help fund and pay for this project. We know that Washington State has committed $1 billion. We're asking that same lift in Oregon legislature this year. Federal dollars are going to play a critical role, but we also know that those two sources alone can't get it done on a project of this size. So we're also looking at tolling as the third leg of the funding stool. So we'll be looking at the expectations from each of those sources to help fund whatever that new and more refined cost estimate is. Other than that, the team is working hard. Once again, we have some very busy days talking to Oregon legislators about the program and making sure they're up to speed. We're going to have a number of new legislators in the Oregon legislature. So it's going to be a very interesting and challenging lift to get everybody up to speed and have them commit to funding this in this session. So with that, I will I'll open the floor for any questions or concerns that you may have. So I can't see any hands. So
Shona has a hand.
Oh, I lowered my hand. I changed my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
Anybody else with the burning concern or desire?
Right.
Thank you. Meg Johnson here. Is there any committed dollar amount from the federal government yet? We've got numbers from Washington, but not Oregon and not the feds.
No, and generally the feds are the last dollars in. They want to see the commitment of the states as well as the commitment of what tolling can bring in. So we still have to get tolling authorization from the state of Washington to complete that picture. But so we're hoping to hear from the feds via two of their larger programs in their history, the mega projects program, as well as the big bridge program. So we think we're going to be very competitive. We're also looking for a capital grant from the Federal Transit Administration. So overall, we think that we could possibly, if we run the table and top out every federal grant opportunity in those three categories, we think we could possibly be somewhere between 2 and 2.5 billion from the federal government. So that's what we're shooting for, to maximize those dollars, but they will be the last ones in.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm curious about, this is Shona, about institutional funders. So like Meyer Memorial, and I know that their grant dollars are smaller amounts, but for any type of community engagement and advocacy that could maybe extend beyond the building of the bridge. Are you looking to include those types of dollars in this project?
Shona, we will look under every sofa cushion that's possible. There are a number of smaller grants that both federal and local that could possibly bring different aspects to the project, whether it's better community outreach, whether it's aesthetic treatments. We'll be looking for all of those type of things, both at the local level and the statewide level, to bring a little more personal touch to the project that generally the big federal dollars may not be able to get to. So yeah, it's a great idea. If you have some leads for us, we'll have our team track them down.
It is a space that I move around in, but I just know that I once visited Minnesota, and when they built their light rail, they had a lot of like corporate funders, local corporate funders, and other philanthropic institutions participate in engaging the community in a meaningful way that was long-term. And I just thought that that collaboration was a unique model. I mean, and potentially could be duplicated. And I think I might have shared some information with Jake at some point. I can reshare it.
We're definitely looking for partnerships. Some of the other key opportunities. Once again, we're going to be having artwork and aesthetics. We're going to have 3 different light rail stations that could possibly be sponsored by others to offset some of the costs. So those are things that are open for discussion as we move the program forward and we get a little more settled on what's going to be built, where it's going to be built, and when. But thank you for that.
Thanks.
Jonah, I think I found it. It was the Central Corridor Funders Collaborative.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I found the email you sent me. Thank you. I'll revisit that for sure.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
All right. Thank you. Thank you,
All
Greg.
right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it to Jake to talk with us about key performance indicators.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. So this is really the core of our meeting today, is building off of what we discussed last month in trying to put together a set of KPIs that we will use to measure our success as a program and to hold the program accountable to essentially the equity framework and the objectives that we've laid out there. So we sent out a draft. It's a Word document. It's a table that has all of the ideas that we've heard from you so far, which we're not saying this is complete or exhaustive of everything out there, but particularly what we talked about last time, and what we'd like to do is walk through that, since we're really trying to get these refined and established as soon as possible. Walk through it with each measure and where there's a need for some clarification or some additional ideas. We want you to offer those. There are some questions that are highlighted in there that we need to answer to be able to make them real indicators that we can track, where some additional detail is needed or some clarity. There are some on there that we, as far as what we can tell, are not necessarily within scope of the program or scope of time, as far as what the lifespan of the program. And that's actually an interesting conversation about tracking stuff after and how that goes, but we can get there. So yeah, I am just going to pull this up and we'll walk through it as a group. I want it to be an open conversation where if you have thoughts that aren't necessarily directly in response to the matrix, that is just fine. If something came to you, you're like, oh wait, what if we could measure this? Or wouldn't it be cool if this was an indicator of success with the program? So before I do that, any questions or thoughts before we dive in? Cool. All right, we'll pull this up. All right. Is that big enough? Anyone want it bigger to be able to see it?
Can you make it bigger?
I can. How's that? All right, I'll assume that's good. All right, so starting right at the top here, one idea was number of DBEs or small businesses trained for this. One point of clarification that we would need is what really is meant by trained, because we do have some others down here that are number of DBEs or small businesses that are contracted as a measure. But I'm wondering if the person who suggested that or otherwise workforce expert folks have thoughts about what that means, or a way to really measure that.
Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, just what does the number of DBEs or small businesses trained was an idea that was floated. Not sure.
I can chime in. I think that probably speaks to sort of the capacity built relative to DBEs. And so, how are we tracking the capacity of DBEs over the course of the project? Could be capacity in terms of, receiving additional opportunity to grow in a particular scope area, and or, just overall general TA support that we're measuring. That would be my guess, but I don't know if others want to chime in. Maybe Aiden or others might have thoughts. And I see Matt's hands is up.
Yeah, I just see that. I mean, training is a little bit of a vague term. So if we could drill down into exactly what kind of trainings we're thinking about for small businesses and DBEs, I think it would be a more meaningful KPI.
Yeah, absolutely. Aiden, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not the person that wrote that, so I'm guessing a little bit here, but I'm wondering if that individual also meant like the number of what's sometimes called a mini prime opportunity. So sometimes on contracts of this size, we'll ask the prime to bring on so many DBEs as mini primes so they can learn that, operations on top of their regular work, which again, it goes back to growing capacity.
Okay. Cool.
I think my hand's just still up. I'm going to lower it.
I think I saw John Gardner's hand pop up too. Is that on purpose?
It was. I think Aiden did a good job. I mean, I started looking through the rest of the goals to make sure the number of DBEs participating in the project was separate, and it is. So, yeah, I think Aiden's right. It's more of like it's not the same as mentoring, but capacity in their ability, sort of pre and post project participation. Did they gain capacity or scope? But I think this is a great example of something that should be defined much, much further.
And that's what we're hoping to do here. So,
and I'm having I'm interested in how are folks trained. Is it that we would hire a contractor to work with these businesses, or maybe I missed a conversation previously regarding?
Yeah, that's a great question. Those decisions haven't been made yet.
Okay.
So that would be part of the conversation is what might be training resources, technical assistance resources.
So I know that the fund that I work for, the Black Future Co-op Fund, did a partnership with the Foster School of Business where they worked with Black businesses during 2020 to help do some of this type of capacity building training around infrastructure so that they are primed for opportunities post COVID lockdown. And that might be a partnership when we think of like partnerships looking at colleges, departments of businesses to do that work in relationship to this project.
It's a great suggestion. Yes, we would love to learn more about that.
So I want to quickly mention one other effort that we're trying to move forward, and this is with the from the US DOT. When I was at the Black Congressional Caucus Foundation meeting back in September, had a chance to run into Shelby Scales, who heads up the Office of Small Business, and I'm going to forget the rest of it, but anyway, for the US DOT. And so we are working to extend an offer for her to come out and meet with the equity group, to meet with some of the groups that represent small businesses and minority businesses, to talk about what things may be available for programs, for funding, and just different ideas of how we may be able to leverage federal dollars to create programs that will be advantageous not only for this project, but for the long run for small businesses and minority businesses in the Washington, Oregon area.
Great. When is that supposed to occur, Greg?
So we are reaching out to her, and hopefully we will have something set. I'm thinking within the first quarter of next year, the first quarter of 2023. So that's what we're shooting for. If we can't get her, we may be able to get someone from the regional office to come and talk to us about the creative and innovative programs that may be available to us.
Great. That's exciting. All right. Well, let's move on to the next one here. So number of workforce training programs developed. This one might be a fairly simple question. Would we want the number of training programs, or would we want just the number of people? Is there a reason why number of programs would be a good metric there? So not sure who provided that or what thoughts folks have. Andre?
Yeah, I would only say that in my experience, you probably need both. Working in this region for a while now, the capacity of our current programs have been stretched to the limit. They need the opportunity for growth, as well as there is definitely room for new folks to enter. So I would suggest it's not an or, it's a both.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. Any other thoughts on that piece? All right, moving along. So health impacts, I know that's come up quite a bit in our conversations, and a couple ideas that have been thrown out are air pollution related, so particulate matter, and how that might change due to the reconstruction of the bridge and the corridor, as well as cancer rates. And of course, those are tied. However, as we noted here, that's really making that connection as far as a KPI for us seems not really feasible at this point. And noted here, it would probably be a longer term like study that would need to be done. But air quality, certainly that's something that we are measuring now and will be measuring, or at least projecting, of how the modified LPA would impact that. The latest result that I've seen is that they're currently not projecting to be any long-term impacts on air quality, but that's long-term. So there's also the short-term within, I think, construction, as well as once construction is complete. So just wanted to flag that, see if there are any questions or additional thoughts around how we measure health impacts in a way that we can meaningfully do over the span of the program. Meg.
We could also look at different like inpatient numbers for the local hospitals to see if there are any corresponding health impacts in that way. I'm sure that all the local hospitals will be able to give you those numbers and see if there's any direct correlations with the program.
You mean like inpatient from specifically like around the air quality? Like
yeah, for air quality for
related.
Yeah. It would be hard to parse out, of course, if there's any like wildfires that happen during this time.
Yeah.
But it's something we could at least track. It would be a tangible number that we could have. Says this is how many folks came in for air-related health impacts. Not necessarily that are connected with the project, but it could be a good something to correlate.
Sure. Okay. That creative thinking. Matt.
This is also a little bit outside the box, but when I think of health impacts, I also think about like, injuries related to the corridor. And so you might want to add that as another potential health impact is just general safety, but the kind of traffic incidents that actually lead to physical injury, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's one of the key goals of the program is to improve safety in the corridor. So that makes a lot of sense. Other thoughts on the health impact side? And like I said, this isn't the final everything that when we're done today, we're done with it all. So, but this is good. Appreciate the creative ideas and brainstorming here. So contracting diversity, back to that topic. Certainly we will be tracking the dollar value of contracts and the percentage of contracts awarded. The goal for, we will establish a goal on percentage. And I think it's percentage of John L., Aiden, other experts. Does the goal end up being percentage of contract dollars or percentage of contracts when you're establishing a DBE goal for a project?
Hayden?
It's a percentage of the contract dollars.
Okay.
So, was that your question?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Yes, and for this project, since it's a multi-year project, we have one goal for the design. We'll have multiple goals for the construction. So
that is going to occur. So we pretty much have that one planned. I'm going to just note there will be multiple goals. And that target percentage is not established yet. So that will be something down the road a little bit.
And Jake, just to clarify, that will be DBE goals. I see that you've highlighted minority-owned business goals.
Right.
Any other things, any other certified businesses we're looking to track, that would be a separate.
That would.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Matt?
So I think another challenge of the project is going to be, I do think that with all of these categories, particularly contracting diversity goals and wage equity, that the project should also be thinking about the equity priority communities. And, I'm going to be upfront that in terms of certified firms, there has not been a great measure of disability-owned businesses or, trying to come up with a good percentage for like a benchmark for hiring people with disabilities might be a challenge. And I think if you start thinking about those questions early on, that this program actually has an opportunity to create some solutions around that. Right now, the COBID system in Oregon really only includes service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. So I think that within a community benefits agreement, you can define these things. So I guess I would challenge the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program to actually look to define disability-owned business in a way they can track that specifically, but also to think about all of the equity priority communities and not just, not just the disability community, but all of the equity priority communities, and ways that you could maybe track it with regard to contracting and wage equity and all these factors, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, are there resources for about disability-owned businesses out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not a brand new concept, and I think you would have to, unfortunately, you'd have to look outside the state because it's not part of our COVID system really right now. So there needs to be some creativity, and there may be still time to actually make some, bigger changes before a community benefits agreement got finalized, so we could actually certify more disability-owned businesses. But there are, it is a concept that if you look around the country, there are, you can find more information about the concept than just within our COVID system. And I think the service disabled veteran owned business, is a certified category, and it's not a stretch to take out the, the fact that it needs to be a service disabled veteran out of that. So there's a possibility to certify businesses within the program that aren't necessarily just veterans with disabilities. I mean, that's extremely important, as are minority-owned businesses or these other things, but I think you can make this a broader category.
Yeah, I totally agree. Matt, are there, not to put you on the spot, and you could send us this offline too, are there particular states or programs that come to mind as sort of being, leading the way, best practice that perhaps we can take a look at language and model ourselves off of?
That's a great question, and some research I'm happy to take on.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to engage you on this because I think, again, as Greg has been pushing the program, we have an opportunity of, I think, setting a new watermark relative to this particular piece, and maybe whatever language we come up with, perhaps is language that the rest of the state, both Oregon and Washington, could potentially use.
I agree with that.
And there will be. You set us up nicely for when we get down to workforce diversity goals, and those do specifically, or those do call out general equity priority communities. So we'll get there. Andre.
I just want to piggyback off of Matt's great point there, and also just recognize the difficulties of some communities to become certified, and wonder if there are any sort of outside the box thinking around, like I know the city of Portland is trying to think about if there's a way to do their own sort of certification system outside of COVID that would allow other folks to enter into their projects. And so I would also challenge the program to think about ways of getting some of those other communities involved in the project as well that find difficulty. And I'm thinking of like our immigrant communities, folks who don't have, papers potentially to become quote unquote certified, but are out here doing great work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a pretty awesome outcome of the program if we were able to do something like that. Cool. Well, any additional thoughts on the contracting diversity side of things? Matt.
So the other thing about community benefits agreement that I wanted to mention was community benefits agreements are a relatively new thing, particularly in the world of development. And I would really, encourage IBR when they're looking at what's been done in community benefits agreements, what's been included in the past, what hasn't. Don't be afraid to include things in the community benefits agreements that haven't been included in the past. This is a huge project, And I think that CBAs with respect to these types of projects, especially this kind of interstate collaboration, could really set a precedent. So I think there really is an opportunity there. And so don't just be limited by what's happened in these agreements in the past, because these are like contracts, and you can really define things and kind of write your own. It's almost like your own law when you're writing a community benefits agreement, because it's an agreement between the community and the developers and the project. So you can put a lot of creative things in there. So don't be limited by what's been there in the past.
Great point. And I think that's the goal. All right. So wage equity, pretty broad thing there. So I think one of two things, we either need to add some more specifics that we can create an indicator out of that, or one thing about it is it's something we just want to ensure on the program throughout the program. And so when we're talking about contract requirements, and making it, what I put here is more about compliance than necessarily performance. Wondering what your reaction is to that, whether it still makes sense to have as a KPI, and if so, whether we can add some more specifics around what exactly it means. John.
Here. Can you hear me, Jake?
Yep.
I think it might be helpful for folks to just see what baseline requirements are going to come with this money, right? So the FTA money has requirements for contracting. So there's some floors here that I think will help people understand. And I think there was a question earlier, wage equity. There are wage requirements for these kind of dollars. So if people had a sense of what the starting point was, it would be probably inform how we could sort of go beyond the minimum expectations. But that's just a suggestion for a future meeting.
That's a great idea. I like that. Aiden?
Yeah, that was following off of John, that was gonna be one of my questions. Whoever wrote that, making sure they understand this will be a prevailing wage project. And so we can kind of showcase, what those prevailing wage rates are. And then if we want to take something above that, the prevailing wages are our floor. So if that's what the individual who wrote wage equity was meaning.
Well, that's helpful for me for sure. Let's see, John, is that just your hand still up or again? All right. So preservation of tribal resources. I think this is one that I think is great to call out, and is also certainly something that we're committed to as a program. So as you've heard before, part of our the process is consultation with the tribes, a government to government type consultation, and through that there have been a lot of conversations about those resources, about historic either artifacts, et cetera, that might be in the program area. And so there's actually a technical report. Greg mentioned we're putting together a lot of those that went through and looked at that to see if, or a few of them between the environmental justice technical report, a cultural resources survey that looked at that to determine whether there were any issues with the construction footprint, and certainly the ongoing partnership with the tribes there is going to be critical. And kind of, I guess I'm curious there, do folks have thoughts about whether that's sort of a mean, ideally it's a yes, no, and it's just like yes, we did. But any other, whoever may have posed that one, any other thoughts as to how that might be measured? All right, let's move on to the next one. Tribal employment rates, and this is an area that I know several on the call have some expertise in, and so and I appreciate this. This really relates back to what we were just talking about, with what's the floor and whether we go beyond that as a program. So that's something that is certainly planned and is going to be incorporated into this. And seems like a fairly straightforward metric, but Aiden, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this one brought some questions to my mind. So curious if the author, when they were saying rates, meant the percentages of workforce amongst trades, or the rate as far as the fee associated with tarot. I want to assume that it's the percentage of workforce, but yeah, I'm not sure.
You said so percentage of workforce versus like the pay?
No, like the rate or the fee that then goes to the tarot programs to help them with the outreach and development of their workforce.
Gotcha.
But if I'm understanding this one correctly, it sounds like it's reading as, the percentages that the tarot program sets that the contractors either meet or exceed those percentages.
That's my interpretation too.
Okay.
But if the person who provided that is here and has a response. Okay, well, let's move on to workforce diversity goals. These all, in our review of them, seem pretty straightforward. Some of the demographic data might be harder to get than other. But some of the ideas here, we can look at who's employed under each demographic and compare that to our equity priority communities, women in the workforce, people with disabilities in the workforce, which is one of our equity priority communities, BIPOC workers, the percentage of project jobs held by BIPOC workers, people with disabilities, and people under 25 is directly out of our equity objective called economic opportunity. We can look at retention rates, and we can look at zip code and local kind of hiring and where folks are coming from that are working on the project. So that one seems all pretty doable and fairly straightforward, but any other thoughts or questions or concerns about this one? Meg.
If someone checks multiple of these boxes that are listed, will they count as just one singular person in that percentage or multiple persons in that percentage? So like if I were both a woman and disabled, would I count as two people in those percentages for tracking?
I think we would want to track them separately. And so you wouldn't be double counted necessarily. Yeah, I mean, I guess that person would be included in both percentages.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's what I was hoping. So that's
okay.
Good. Excellent.
Matt.
Something else I wanted to mention, and this actually goes to worker satisfaction as well, but I think when you're looking at workforce diversity goals, not just to look at the industries that are, like the percentage of people in an industry that are being hired based on these equity goals, but also to look at the actual occupations within the industries. So the reason I mention this is because, particularly with persons with disabilities, it's very challenging for them to get roles in the management occupations within an industry. So actually being able to break down within the industry what occupations they're actually performing, I think will add a little bit more meaning to that performance, measuring that performance.
That's great. All right, so moving on to the next one. So worker satisfaction over time is one that came up, and certainly seems like there are ways to measure that and track that through worker satisfaction surveys. The thing that we've pointed out here, if we were to do this, we want to make sure that things like that are not too onerous for the firms and employees. They're going to be very busy with their day-to-day for sure. And in particular, the small businesses, things like this can be a little more complicated to pull off depending on how centralized their workforce is or not. But another thing to just kind of flag is sometimes with these types of things, there's turnover. There's certainly a lot of subjectivity as far as how a person might be feeling one day and taking a survey versus how they feel on the day they take it 6 months down the road. So it just could be a tricky thing to draw some solid conclusions from, but I wanted to throw out that concern and see if folks have ideas or a response to address that or other ways to gauge, to speak to this indicator. Matt.
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot tonight, but with the service, with the kind of like satisfaction surveys, I think you have a real challenge in terms of deciding what factors are really contributing to worker satisfaction. But in terms of making it onerous or not, I think from an employee perspective, one of the things that's really going to matter is whether this survey is actually making a difference. And, I think one of the challenges is going to be setting aside enough resources to actually review these surveys and make meaning out of them. And there are, surveys are really challenging because you can either boil them down into 10 really specific questions that are multiple choice and make it less onerous and easy to use. But then, you might not be gathering the most valuable data. Mm-hmm. Whereas a narrative, you give people an opportunity to provide a narrative, you might get more valuable data theoretically, but it might be really hard to parse it out. And that would probably be much more resource intensive and onerous. So there is a little bit of a trade-off, I feel like, in terms of, if you make it less onerous, it might be less valuable. But if you make it more onerous, it might also make it more difficult for people to participate.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But I think it is doable. Just might be a little, yeah. Well, it's kind of we'd have to see how it turns out, and I don't know. But if like John has his hand raised, so maybe you have ideas of how to make these kind of work and meaningful and as objective as possible.
Well, I want to go back to what you said. Like, so the point of this, and I'm really trying to understand how this would work. So I do like the idea of getting a sense of like job site culture, as well as upward mobility. And I think Matt and other were saying things like, well, it's one thing to get on the job, but if it's an 8-year project, do people feel like they have a chance to sort of grow in their job, grow in their trade, grow in their company? But then it gets really kind of hard for us to do anything if a subcon, you know what I mean? Like, do we, I'm not feeling satisfied in my job. So do we say, well, there's 300 other contractors on this project? So I worry a little bit about like, to what end But I think there's stuff related to like worksite culture, worksite safety, feeling included. I like that. I just worry, like measures for measure's sakes is not good. But if we have a way to actually leverage this to make it a better experience, then that makes sense. But it feels a little almost too undefined at this point.
Yeah, I guess that's part of my concern too. But we can, if folks have thoughts, and of course we're going to ask you to provide any additional comments or thoughts in writing on this. So that's definitely one to flag. Aiden?
I'll just add real quick because I don't want to take up too much space. But if we end up doing a safe and welcoming worksite culture program on this project, which I think we've been discussing doing something like that, then there will be, folks on site doing those surveys and just kind of observing to kind of capture some of that when it's happening, how people are feeling, and hopefully bring that back to the leadership. And then if it's something we have control over, we can fix. If it's not, we have to figure out a way to solve it. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so maybe that ends up just kind of being the tracking of that program's success is sort of the KPI. Andre?
Yeah, only to add to think about how the surveys are administered. Doing it out in public may not be a great idea for certain folks. And so just thinking about, what's the process of administering the survey.
Yes. Appreciate that. Okay. I see we're got 7 minutes on this item, so we'll try to be quick. So increased access to affordable housing. I know it's something we've talked a lot about, and it is also a tricky one. As we talk about the CBA, there's certainly an interest in how housing and affordable housing plays into that. But we don't know yet exactly what that'll look like. And then the other piece being, the increase in affordable housing won't all be related to the development of to the construction of the program. So we would kind of need to figure out how to reconcile that. And that's kind of the concern or larger question. I don't know if folks have immediate thoughts or reactions to that. All right. Well, we can go back to that one down the road. So I know one thing came up in a small group last time around paratransit and access for people with disabilities to paratransit services. We flagged those as not really part of this program scope, just since certainly C-Tran and TriMet have their paratransit services. But with this, we're talking about, the high capacity transit and what that impact has in terms of accessibility and mobility. But wanted to just see if that's maybe we missed something in what that idea was, or any reaction there. But John.
Apologies. This is actually about the increased access to affordable housing. Sorry, I'm
You're
slow.
Good. You're good.
So two things. I think when you think of workforce development programs or workforce training programs, and all of the potential wraparound services new workers might need, workforce housing might be something to consider. I haven't even got a sense of how many workers this is going to be, but that might be something. But the other thing that I think can happen is I believe there can be some sort of aspirational goal set aside for properties purchased for this project. that a certain percentage of those properties after they're used for the bridge construction can be returned to affordable housing. So that might be something to consider. And I think what I'm struggling with is a lot of this stuff I think is going to be part of your community benefit agreement, and some of the stuff won't. It'll just be other goals. So that's where I'm, when do I chime in or whatever. But I think that would be a great goal, like a percentage of all the land that is only needed for the construction, but then return a percentage of that being made available to affordable housing first would be one way. So thanks.
That's great. Thank you. Matt?
I guess another angle on affordable housing might also be how the transportation corridor connects to affordable housing. And that might be another, like indicator of success, is identifying where the most affordable housing areas are, and looking at, I get that the project is not really there to create affordable housing per se, but to make sure that it's like providing access. I mean, it's a transportation corridor, so it's about making it easier for people to transport themselves from their low-income community to work. So I think there's other ways of thinking about affordable housing that aren't just the creation of it,
not just building it.
Yeah,
that's a good point. All right. In our last few minutes here, I wanted to get to a couple maybe quick questions, maybe not. So we have a couple of these here that are looking at specifically improved access for people with disabilities. And I love how specific these are, the transfers and the distance that people have to access points. However, I think we need some help figuring out how you really measure that. Are we talking about, I'll leave it at that, because I know for me it's not totally clear. Matt?
I do think this is a little bit about disproportionate impacts. So one way to measure it is to compare, the distance that people with disabilities are traveling versus those without disabilities, or to compare the number of transfers a person with disabilities is experiencing versus somebody without disabilities. Maybe that's one way to think about it.
And I guess I'm wondering how we collect that data.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Mac.
I mean, how do you collect usage data in the first place? I just don't know much about that. So.
Yeah. I mean, they do rider surveys to a certain degree.
Could it be done by 10 different kinds of trips to and from certain locations? And it can then be ascertained what it is now and what it would be once the bridge is up and running in its full form.
So like
something
kind of
like that.
A sampling of different.
Yeah. Like to different locations within the program area, possibly even. Not outside of it, just within it. Is it better? Is it worse?
And are you saying like focused for specifically people with disabilities? And
yes.
How might we do that? We do have, well, there is some analysis that that I can share, and I've shared this a little bit ago as far as what the impact of the new light rail would be in terms of access to jobs, and did it by demographic. And jobs can kind of serve as a proxy for overall access to services and such. But I need to think about if there's an additional way to do that. It's a challenging one. Matt.
Well, I also think you might think about On the spot, I can't think of a really good way to do this, but there are other resources like the Committee on Accessible Transportation through TriMet. Reaching out to some of your disability community partners to see if they could help you with that question. I really think CAT might be a resource for you.
I like that.
Maybe they already have tools for how they're measuring their disability. How people with disabilities are engaging with transit.
Sure. That's a great idea. All right. Well, I see we are at a little bit after where we said we would go time-wise. So how about we can return to this at our next meeting, and also in the meantime, would definitely appreciate your review of the document and mark it up, add comments, add questions, all of that. And then maybe we can bring a bit more of a refined version to our January meeting and keep going on this, because I think we're putting together some really cool, meaningful indicators, and I know I'm pretty excited about it. So turn it back to you, Dr. Hunt, to take us on.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we're at public comment, yeah? So if you'll put up our public comment slide. Hey, Lauren.
Hi. I was just going to say that we don't have anyone in the waiting room currently.
Okay. All right, well, how about I'm going to read the slide, and if we don't have any takers, Jake, do you want to go for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right. So the instructions for public comment. Through Zoom, please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR EAG meeting webpage. Commentators will be allowed to turn on their webcams, but will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. By phone, dial 253-215-8782, meeting ID 986-0940-5983, passcode 701376. Dial *9 to raise your hand. Dial *6 to unmute yourself. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. Please provide your name and affiliation. Commentators will be given 2 minutes to speak. And if we run out of time and you've not had a chance to speak, you can still provide comments after the meeting. All right, Jake, so I'm going to turn it to you for now.
All right, let's try to go through a little more of this. Okay, so I'm gonna just go to the ones where I've highlighted that we have some questions. So economic impact of BIPOC individuals over the span of the project was one that need a little bit better understanding of how you might measure that, and if whoever provided that might have some more specifics around it. All right, well, think about it. And if you do have thoughts, again, you can provide them back in writing. We had here Andre.
Sorry, Jake. Just a clarifying question. Do you know if is that based on like current workforce data, or is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking. I'm
Okay.
asking. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Thanks.
You're good. So then we had one about percentage of apprentices becoming owners of firms. Certainly a great aspiration. I don't know that, I don't think it's something we can necessarily measure, and but please, if folks know, correct me if I'm wrong.
We will be tracking the percentage of apprentices. So as long as it was during the project life cycle, and we had a way to, ask them as they journeyed out and then were starting their own business. It's possible.
Possible. The question
possible to measure.
Is it a meaningful KPI? It certainly is. If we're thinking about kind of a dashboard of measures and such, are we? Is that the expectation we're setting? That
I think the percentage of apprentices that then journey out might be a more meaningful measure, but that's just my opinion.
That makes sense. John?
Yeah, I think it's a little both and, right? So to me, it gets back to a lot of the stuff we're talking about. We better have an investment plan before the project starts. So the number of small businesses developed that had a chance to participate on the program is a good measure. But that would, so how many current journey level workers are out there, BIPOC or women, that could potentially, with small business development support, could position themselves to get contracts on this project. But an 8-year construction project, to Aiden's point, you can definitely start as an apprentice, journey out, and maybe if you're interested in starting a small business, it's possible. But it's more likely that we'll, again, it's a community benefit agreement, but at some point we need to talk about pre-construction community investments to start creating the pipeline for all of this. But maybe that's a future meeting.
And we are on the same page. That is something that we've started to talk about and put a plan together for, because that's huge. Are we going to have enough workers to build this thing? Because it's huge. So yeah, we'll certainly keep this group updated and come with any requests for feedback or etc. on that. I see that we're at 6:54. So I'll just point out, would like some more clarity of kind of just how to measure. This is a pretty specific one, percentage of students interning on the program. We will have students interning, so it might just be number of students, but interested as why someone might have put percentage and what that means. And then generational wealth growth. I know that was something that I think was mentioned that City of Vancouver is trying to do something towards. Don't think it's necessarily something that we could have as a program KPI. So flag that as such. But again, not trying to be absolute, open to thoughts and ideas. But why don't we put a pin in that? And I assume no one else has signed up. No one signed up, Lauren, for comment?
No, still no one else.
All right.
All right, well, let's have our closing poll and our closing slide. So for our wrap up, our usual 3 takeaways from today, our poll, and we will not meet in December. We will meet January 23rd, 5:30 to 7:30, and happy holidays. So 3 takeaways from tonight's meeting. Well, I know for one, shout out to Matt. I learned a lot from just getting to hear the way you think about these key performance indicators and how we can center disability access and tracking in our thinking. So, shout out, Aiden.
Takeaway for me was just the breadth of unique perspectives from this diverse group of what things we can possibly measure to show success on this program. So I really appreciate that, and we'll take that away.
One more. Well, one that I also have is welcome Soko and welcome Andre. So it's good to have you all here. All right, so the poll is up, and once you finish it, we are complete. So we will see you in January, and enjoy however you celebrate December. Ciao, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.